Hi, everybody. This is Katie Joe, and I'm the host of Sovereign Soul. This is Knowing Your Own Spiritual Truth. Now, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the spiritual toxicity that we sometimes see in this new age world, in the spiritual leader world, in this there's only love and light world. And I wanted to talk about segueing off of my podcast where I talk about being held hostage. And I was in a relationship with a boyfriend who was very abusive when he was drinking. And when he was drinking, he would behave and act in ways that were dangerous for me. Dangerous and violent things occurred. And then afterwards, he would say he didn't remember it. And I remembered it. And I remember having these conversations with him and saying, he would say to me, it's not fair for you to hold this against me. I don't even remember it. And how can you judge our whole relationship and who I am based on this momentary lapse, this, you know, 2 minutes of the whole night? And I was like, because that contaminates the whole rest of the evening. You losing your cool for that, putting me in a position where I don't feel safe has now contaminated the whole rest of the evening. And what people don't realize, especially people who are abusive, is they don't realize that even though it's just a momentary thing, that the whole rest of the relationship is now affected. And it's affected because I'm now walking on eggshells, because now I can't show up in my authenticity. And the backlash that I would get if I said that to this person is I say, well, how come I can't be authentic? You can always be authentic. Everyone can always be authentic. But when it breaches into abuse, that is not being authentic. That is not okay. You can always share your feelings, but when it moves into name calling or physically um, moving into somebody's energy field or into their physical space or physically engaging with them, now you've crossed the line and that has now affected everything. So I want to get back to my subject of spiritual toxicity. So I was being mentored through this spiritual mentor as I was in a faith transition. I was exploring a lot of different energy healing modalities and things like that. And this person I held on like the highest pedestal. And they knew all of my deepest, darkest secrets, like all the stuff that you only tell your deepest, darkest best friend. And, you make them promise you'll never tell anybody. But as I was moving through all this spiritual stuff, especially with this relationship, I was sharing about some of the things that was happening. And you'll find in my book that's coming out with the Writer's Island TV show that it talks about where it accumulated to this crescendo of me being in serious danger. And what had happened, and this has happened multiple times before, is when he would be not thinking in his right mind. And I would usually just want to leave the room because I knew it was a volatile situation. And I would try to leave before things started getting thrown against the wall or names were called and things like that. And his behavior was he'd grab me and he'd pin me on the ground and he wouldn't let me leave. And often it would last for quite a while as he was screaming and yelling and calling me names. And so the very last time that this happened, and this is before I was held hostage, he had pinned me down again, and something inside of me like snapped. And what snapped inside of me was this: I can't do this anymore. I was actually furious, but I was actually afraid. I was afraid that I couldn't survive mentally and emotionally another verbal beating. Even though I was physically being held down against my will, it was the words that he would say and the cruelty that he would unleash. And I felt like I felt like I was at a breaking point. And so as I was there on the ground, I remember I started hitting and pounding on his chest as hard as I could and saying, get off of me. And he was shocked and stunned because this has happened so many times before. And I would usually do what is known in psychological terms as fawn. So there's fight, there's flight, and then there's freeze or fawn. And so normally I used to just sit there and be like, okay, he's drinking, he's not thinking clearly. Eventually he'll calm down. And so I'm just going to sit here and wait until he does. But this time I was like, I can't do it again. Because I never knew how long it would take for his episode to last, and I would just be pinned. So I began hitting his chest as hard as I could. Now, if you listen to my other podcast, you kind of heard what happened after that. And it was this big ordeal, and I had to run for my life and literally hitchhike to another city for help. So, getting back to spiritual toxicity. So, the people that knew what had happened was this spiritual mentor. And he, after this episode, was like, I'm so sorry. I don't want to lose you. I love you. And so he asked, would you be willing to go sit with the spiritual mentor and we can meet with her a few different times and maybe we could figure a way to work this out? And I said, sure. And I wish that I wouldn't have, but if you've ever gotten out of a relationship like that, you know that you are in this totally damaged space and your psyche is so beaten down. Like the woman that I am now would say F off, but the woman who's been verbally abused and mentally and even physically for a period of time is so beaten down. So I was like, okay, if we can figure this out, you bet I'll give you a chance. So we would go to this mentor, and she knew everything that had happened. She knew all of it. And I remember one time he wasn't even there in one of the quote unquote counseling sessions. And I was talking to her and I felt so bad because he was saying, she hit me. I've never hit her. She hit me. She's the abuser. Sure, she's telling everybody that I did this, but she hit me. And I remember her even saying to me, Katie, of course you did. What else would you do? Because I had started to be so gaslit that I'm like, oh, yeah, I was so wrong that I hit him. And she's like, of course you did. You were pinned down against your will again. He behaves violently towards you when he's in that state. You were surviving, you were fighting back for your life. So she even understood that. But here's where it came in. She was like, I see the light in him. I see who he truly is. I see the magnificent spirit and soul that he is. And so I want to support you guys in getting back together because if he can overcome this, you two could be such a huge power couple. You could change lives. You could stand on stages. I can see it. I'm an intuitive and I can see the future of this possibility. And so here I was with this guy that's telling me I'm going to change. I love you, blah, 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 blah. And then I have this spiritual mentor saying, that he's just showing up in his weakness, but who he truly is the most amazing, magnificent man. And I'm going to help him overcome that. And so she says, I won't take a side because I want the healing. I'm about soul healing. So what happened is then we were both being invited to all of the same events that she was hosting, to all of the same classes that she was hosting. And it put me in a dangerous situation because this person wasn't changed. And then what this man also did is he decided to enroll in this course that she was offering and really ended up going under her wing. And I understand her motivation. I truly do. I have no blame for her in this way. But she wanted to help. Well, what happened is that caused me to retract because I no longer had a safe place. And honestly, as I say this out loud, I don't know if it ever was. So here we are. I'm in this situation. I start retracting back in because I have no safe place. I've been mentally and emotionally and even physically abused. And I am just sinking down. And the person or the situation and the events that I used to go to that I felt like were safe now weren't safe anymore. And so, through her intention to assist this person, this man, to be his best self, she brought him into the community. Now, we're years and years later. And what happened is this man has gone through multiple relationships, a line of relationships where he has showed up the same way that he showed up with me. And what also has happened is then he was introduced to this community introduced from this spiritual mentor and guide who knew the backstory, knew all of the stories, but wanted to support him in being his best. And he ended up being a predator and abuser to many of the women that were in that community who now have come to me with stories of we trusted him because of her. And I ended up ABC to the extent and even to, and I'm just going to say it, alleged rape. Alleged. So this is where we have this toxic spirituality, it is up to all of us to say, yes, I see the soul. I see the soul and the light in every single person, but we still live in a physical realm. We still live in a human dimension. And the best way that I can convey this, and I'm paraphrasing the old radio show host, Dr. Laura Schlesinger, and she uses this analogy, and I'm going to paraphrase it. And she said, just because you like a crocodile, it's not judgment on a crocodile. Crocodiles are beautiful. They are divine souls. Their souls are full of light. But when you're around a crocodile, they need to be behind glass because they're still a crocodile. And so when we spiritually bypass or have this spiritual toxicity, and that is so damaging, multiple women have been hurt, multiple women have been accosted because of spiritual bypassing. So, food for thought.